Thank you, everybody, for coming. My stomach hurts. And I believe I will probably cry. I have not been able to figure out when I cry and when I don't. When I'm not crying, I'm like, I'm good. And then when I'm crying, I'm like, this is never going to stop. So I tell that to people, and it still feels different when it's happening to me. And I want to thank everybody on Zoom and all those many, many, many people who reached out and said they'll watch the recording, but they're not available. So I want to thank everybody. I'll tell you because you watched the recording, for reaching out and telling me that and saying how much you wanted to be a part of it and you weren't available. There are a few reasons why I wanted to gather here.
In case we need.
So many, many people reached out to me when I was in Israel and afterwards. And I know that each one of those people would have made the effort to come in person if geographically it wasn't 6,000 miles away. So I want to thank you for the caring in person or on Zoom and give an opportunity to connect without having to tell the whole story 1,000 times or however many times. And I'm grateful because when I was in Israel, I didn't feel it was my role to be the central griever, even though I was grieving, and still I'm grieving so deeply because that's my daughter and my son-in-law who have, that's really the central locus of the grief. And so until people came to give me a pseudo Shiva call, I didn't even realize that I needed to process and talk about it as well. Because my role was often to be in the kitchen, which was only 2 steps away from the rest of it, and make sure everything was organized and be a point person or move people along and clean up every single night, listen to my daughter and son-in-law sobbing their hearts out, or pick up the children every morning and bring them to God and then come back and daven with them and listen to them say Kaddish. But a grandmother grieves as well, not only for my sweet grandchild, but also watching my daughter and son-in-law in a role they should never, ever have had to have. So before I begin to cry all the time, I will also thank everybody for the Tehillim group that Rev. Stephen put together, and people immediately jumped on, even though, as Yishai and I said, we didn't know what we were davening for because we knew that he had been deprived of oxygen for so long, and we didn't want to daven to have a vegetable or somebody very compromised. So, and yet, people davening and saying Tehillim is still comforting because it means people care. And I'll say this, which I said over and over at the Shiva house, quoting Rachel Goldberg Poland, who also went through a different kind of horrible grieving and is still, every person who reaches out, every text message, every hug, virtual or otherwise, everything, every smile, every time somebody goes like this, every time somebody says to me, En milim, I have no words, but I'm here for you, takes one molecule of grief off, one molecule of pain. But that molecule is really, really meaningful because it is so much worse to do it without that. So I want to thank everyone, and it's true, En milim. I want to thank people for money that people just automatically gave as soon as Rev. Stephen said you can give, or even before. And that money is really designated to, along with a fund from their shul, they live in Karmegat, and along with the fund is designated to help them with grieving support, mental health support, whatever it is they need. But it's specifically for that because the other needs, thank God, are being taken care of. But we wanted to make sure that whatever they need, and if you need to go private in Israel, whatever it is, that there will be funds for that, and they shouldn't feel that should hold them back. So I'm going to share the story and what it was like for me and what it was like to be a part of it. And I also want to teach what I shared on Shavuot. Some of you have either were in person or read the drasha about the really, really beautiful initiative that my son-in-law daughter came up with and is what's giving all of us chizuk and koach. As Yishai said over and over, my son-in-law over and over at the Shiva, it's what's keeping him going down into the abyss. And I think there's a great lesson to learn from that. How do we keep ourselves from going into the abyss? Because if you think that somebody did not leave an imprint and did not leave a memory, that's so much harder. It's like that person didn't exist. And how much can a 6-month-old baby leave in this world, except for the hole in our hearts? He was a really sweet, sweet baby, but all babies are sweet. So let me start at the beginning, when I was lucky enough to be able to hop on a plane and go to his brit. I took our Kia, so last minute you got to take our Kia because it's cheaper than LL. And Isha and Meital have 2 other boys, older boys, Yahel and Yehuda. And it was very important. So everybody was taking bets, Yisha, Yahel, Yehuda, this is going to be a Yud name. And what was going to be the Yud name? And a few weeks before he was born on Sukkot, the last of the hostages amazingly came home. And for the first time in so many years, except for I think Ron Arad, hostages were not outside of Israel. And they knew that they wanted to call him Yovel, not Yuval, but Yovel, because in the Jubilee year, everybody goes back to their home and their families. So they knew that he would be Yovel. Even if he'd been a girl, which he wasn't, he would have been Yovel. And then I came back. I left after the Brit. I came for 3 days. I left after the Brit. And Meital said, it's easy to say goodbye, Ima, because I know you're coming back. So then I came for my scheduled trip, and I did the night shifts, and I held that baby. I took him as much as I could night so I could give them a break, organized. They just moved, did everything a Safta does with so much joy. It was really so much my pleasure. And then about a month ago at 2 a.m., I happened to be up. It was Saturday night. And I was grateful for the chain of events that, ironically, I was up. I shouldn't have been up at 2 a.m. And I got a call from Meital. And I didn't understand. And I heard a siren. And she told, I thought there was a siren, like an attack. Because I heard the siren of the ambulance. She told me she was in the ambulance. And the metapelet, the nanny, had found Yoveli not breathing. She did CPR right away. She called ambulances right. She called Madar right away. And Meital said, I can't believe I might lose it. And at 3 a.m., I went to sleep because I didn't know what to do. They had brought a pulse back, but what I didn't know at the time was that they already knew that he had been without oxygen for too long. It is a classic case of sudden infant death syndrome, still not understood, still no easy way to prevent it unless they wear this special sock, which don't put on every kid every single time they take a nap or go to sleep or sit in the car or anything. And at 3 hours later at 6 a.m., her older sister, Ruchama, my oldest daughter, said, I can never forget, that goes through my head. Ima, I think you have to get on a plane. It's not good. And 4 hours later, with the help of people here or on Zoom or wherever they are, I was on my way to the airport. I didn't even know what to pack or how long to go for. But somebody showed up and held my hands and got me a ticket and got me insurance and made sure I had medication. By the way, I didn't have enough medication of something. So somebody called the pharmacy at 9. It was Sunday morning, and somebody picked it up at 9:02, and by 9:05, it was in my apartment. And that's the way we show up for each other. And those seem like little cheseds, and they're not. They're big. And somebody else said, but if you don't have it, I know a gemach in Israel that can get it for you. And my daughter said to me before, both my other 2 girls said to me, Ima, sleep on the plane, because you have to be fully on when you get there. So I did. I slept on the plane, and every time I got up and went to the bathroom, I cried. And I'm glad that I got there as quickly as I did, because I was there by 10 o'clock or 11 a.m. Monday morning, Israel time. It was tremendous shock and confusion. What will happen until we realized. They walked out as we got there, and they said, Meital and Yishai were holding hands and said, the doctors, they do a reassessment after an X amount of hours, and they said, we're stopping anything extra, because there's really no hope.
Try to speak a little louder.
Okay. And here's what a grandmother has to do. Meital said to the social worker in the intensive care, I don't know what to do. The nanny has been texting me and asking me what's going on. What do I do? And the social worker said to her, you have to tell her, but you can't tell her in a text message. You have to speak to her. And Meital said, I can't do that. And I said, I can do that. So I went outside, and Ruchama said, look at the yam, because it was in Ashkelon, and just tell her while you're looking at the yam. And that's a moment that I will never forget. But I was able to do something for my daughter in real time, as hard as it was. Later on, I also told the Mohel, because they also said, we want to tell him, but we can't do it. So I said, I'll do it. And he came, paid a Shiva call. Meital described what it was like for her. It is so indescribable. She dropped off the baby, Yoveli, and as she was driving to work, she saw an ambulance, and it's a small town. And then she saw another ambulance and another, and it was only when she got back and she saw 5 ambulances that she realized they had come for her baby, because everybody who heard that it was a baby responded immediately. So like every ambulance that was available just showed up and did their very best. And here was another little gift. You know, the metapelet, the nanny, was so hard for her. And I said to her right away, nobody's holding responsible. Opposite. You know, we thank you for checking on him. And somebody came to the Shiva and said that he had gotten a picture of his baby at 8:11, because I guess that's what they do nowadays. Didn't do it in my time, take a picture of the baby and you put them in for a nap. And he had only been put in a few minutes before. So she went in to put his baby in and looked over and saw Yobel and immediately started CPR. And because of that, they had the small gift of being able to hold him and to say goodbye to him, which is not a small gift. And here's something else that happened. I made sure that I went in to the room where he was. I mean, it was hard. I didn't know what I would see, but I couldn't imagine not being able to have that shared experience. I wanted to know what he looked like, what it was like to be there with him. And he looked like a beautiful doll. Not responsive, but a beautiful doll. And then a little later, Meital asked if she could hold him, because they were stopping anything extra. And they did unbelievable maneuvering. They literally had to put their finger on his heart so he wouldn't die while they were transferring him to her. She held him, and I said to them, is it okay if I stay? And they said, yes. I said, I think you should sing to him. And Meital said, but it's not him. He's gone. I said, you know, they say that the hearing is the last to go, so sing to him. So they sang Nighty Night, and they sang all the nighttime songs. And then after about an hour, Meital, the nurse said to Meital, why don't you just go for a brief walk? You'll come back, you'll hold him again. They put him down. Meital's father stayed with him. And as soon as he was put down out of his mother's arms, he said the pulse went from 75 to 35 to 9 to 0. And they called them back, and Meital said, now I know that he was there when I sang to him. So it's a little bit of chesed. And they knew, as soon as they knew that he would not make it, they knew they wanted to donate his organs, because obviously she's my daughter, so she knew that. And Yishai as well. Unfortunately, because he had been deprived of oxygen for so much time, most of the organs were not viable, but his corneas were. So it's something you learn, that corneas can last without the oxygen. And they waited 3 hours for the surgeon to be able to show up. And they said he had such beautiful, beautiful eyes, which he really did, really just beautiful eyes, beautiful blue eyes. And there was a baby, I guess, in Bellinson Hospital, which is near Petah Tikva. They were down south more, and the corneas were sent. And then already the next morning at the funeral, Yishai, I said a Mizmor Tehillim, and the two of them spoke. And Yishai said, we don't want his memory to not be in this world. So we want everybody to be ambassadors of his ayin tova, his einayim tovot, his beautiful good eyes. So we're asking everybody if they will think of someone who maybe they don't get along with or started off on the wrong foot. He said this at the funeral. And think of how you can reset that, how you can look at that person with an ayin tova. And a person came over to him at the funeral and said, there's somebody I work with. We started off on the wrong foot. I'm going to change it. And by the time he came to make a Shiva call, he had already done it. So when Yishai told the story, he said, this is for mitkadmim, advanced. You don't all have to do it right that second, but everybody should think of somebody. And I can tell that story about myself, which I did also on Shavuot, and other people have been so touched by this initiative. It's beautiful, beautiful initiative. Something that I learned about grief is that I lost my father when I was 36, and that was a vertical loss. But I guess somewhere in the backs of our minds, we know we're going to lose our parents, or we think we will, not at age 36. He was 60. And then I lost my sister to depression. It happened right after I got here. And my brother, we're not sure why he died in his sleep, maybe from the COVID vaccine. And those were vertical, and those were horizontal. And this was a vertical grief that I just can't wrap my mind around, because to me, I have this image in my mind of my family tree, and one of the branches is bare and is not flowering anymore. And it just feels so hard to have that. Reb Stevens said, but there is a little flowering. There's a little bit of flowering from the Ayin Tovah. So it's true. I can imagine a little bit of flowering. Now, I know a lot of us think of Haredim, who are the ultra right-wing religious people, especially in Israel, that we think of them as people who perhaps don't know how to relate to women or don't know how to be compassionate. And I want to tell you that the person in the Chevra Kadisha there, I think this man is like 6'5", a very long frock and payas, and he was the most kind, compassionate, warm person. And I want to give you some examples, because we have such hakarat hatov, such gratitude in our hearts for what he did. Like when we said to him, are we starting? It was already a few minutes after, a lot of people were there. And he said, when the parents are ready, they tell us, no rushing. He was so kind. He called me Rabbanit Bracha. I thought that was kind. There are people in America who don't call me Rabbanit Bracha, and they're not ultra-Orthodox. He came to the Shiva, and during the funeral, he broke down and cried. Just don't think I've ever seen that from a Chevra Kadisha. He was very, very, very patient and kind. When we were walking to the grave, one of the things my son-in-law also shared was that She'ein milim, when there are no words, we can sing. And that was very important. And when we sang, he lowered his voice so that the Tehillim that he was reciting on the way would not take center stage. He was so kind and really gave the family whatever we needed from him. Another thing that Yishai said at the funeral, he said, don't stay away. Don't cross the street when you see us. You can come and hug us. You can cry with us. We don't want to be that family. We want our children to grow up happy. We want to have simchana. And I asked the rabbi, who, by the way, is somebody who grew up in HIR, Hillel Grossman and Debbie Braverman's son, Rabbi Minadav, who was phenomenal, just beyond phenomenal. And I said, would you please send this message out to the rest of the community? Because I think that's such an important message to send. Don't stay away. We're not pariahs. We have our grief. You're with us, but we don't want to be held at arm's length. I think that's just such an important and hard message to give. I want to tell you, we're walking up and we got to the grave, and I look back and I saw hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people. It was unbelievable. I mean, somebody said 1,000. I don't think there were 1,000, but there were 600, 500. It was so meaningful that people came because it touched their hearts and they wanted to say, we care. There's a row in Kiryat Gat in the cemetery. Right by, there's all the graves. And then there's like a little row right between the wall and the rest of the graves where they tucked in all the children. Really a sweet, sad row. And Maytal asked me to organize 6 balloons, 1 for each month of his life. And she let them fly after the burial. And that's what she wants to do on his birthday with the older boys who they haven't been to the grave yet. A woman reached out to her who saw this initiative, Lirot Tov, and sent her a text message in Kiryat Gat. And she said she was very touched by it. And Maytal said, please introduce yourself to me. So when they came to Shul on Shabbat, she did. And it turns out that her daughter is buried 2 graves away from Maytal's son. And Maytal said, it's different grief. She was stillborn, or she died in utero at the 9th month, almost when she was full term. But they hugged and they said, grief is grief. And I hope that they can support each other that way. And I want to tell you what the Shiva house was like. It was full every second. We set up 10 to 2 and I think 5 to 9. And there wasn't a moment that it wasn't bursting with people. So many people that at some point they said, you know, sometimes we need to move people along. And my older daughter said, I'm not good at that. I'm like, I'm good at that. I got that. And then, of course, there was the time when I did it and my son was like, no, you can stay. Okay, fine. You give me the high sign when you want me to move people along. I have to tell you that some of my favorite messages that I got in Israel were people who wrote, you know, there are a lot of disappointed children who are looking for their sticker Rebbe. And they don't understand when they come to shul and you're not sitting there with the stickers. So that was, you know, you give stickers so that they'll want to come to shul when they're little, and then they'll want to come to shul when they're older for different reasons. So that was very, very, very sweet. And I did write it down. The house itself held a texture. The first day when they sat Shiva, they have terrible Shiva chairs in Israel. There's something they can learn from us. They're terrible. They're like this, they're low, they're uncomfortable. My daughter said, I feel like I need a neck rest. I can't do this. And after an hour, Yishai said, can you please bring in the wicker love seat that was on their porch so they could sit together? You know, it's really the only time that a husband and wife sit Shiva pretty much. I mean, in most cases for a child. And they really needed each other and hold each other. And there was so much food that 2 times a day we had to redo the food. We stored food, we gave away food, reorganized. And I got to know her community and they got to be their friends. I know this one story, I know that one story. It was really sweet and lovely. And then one neighbor just appeared twice a day with something in Israel. I don't know if they have it here. It's called the Shoev Shotef. It's a vacuum cleaner that also mops the floor. And she just like appeared. She just appeared. And she just appeared, she cleaned it up, and she left. And then she came again a few hours later. And I said, like, so she told me where to get it. I said, but if we buy one, will it come with you? Like, will you also? And then there was one girl, a sweet redheaded girl named Shirel, who used to work with my son-in-law. He's a child psychologist, an educational psychologist. So she called, she saw I was kind of in charge and she said, come here. And I said, yeah. She said, where's the laundry? And I said, what do you mean? She said, I came to fold the kids' laundry. And I said, I happen to have just folded and my grandchildren were there, they were folding. She says, okay, no problem, I'm going to do the bathrooms. And that was it. She just came in and did the bathrooms. She just did it. She said, I won't go into their room, but I'm going to do the other ones. And I'm like, what kind of an amazing chesed? I mean, in America, you probably wouldn't do that. But in Israel, it was just such a, nobody would even have known if she hadn't asked me. She just went in and did it. And friends took the kids, picked them up, bathed them, brought them back, gave them gifts, so many gifts they had to like put them away, just on and on. I want to tell you a little bit about what it's like to be a 6-year-old brother and almost 4-year-old when so when Yishai and Meital, they came home the first day. In fact, Meital said, how can I leave him in the hospital? And Yishai said, we have 2 older children and we need to be with them. And they knew how to tell them. They said, you use the word death. You can't say sick. You can't beat around the bush because then they think when anybody is sick, it could lead to death. And Yahel, who's 6 and played with him every day, said, but he hasn't had a Yom Huledet yet. He hasn't had a birthday yet. He just couldn't wrap his mind around that. And at the end of Shiva, they would come in after playing. They go to Gan, they go whatever, then they go to a friend's. And Yehuda, the first day he came in, he's 3 3/4, he said, L'mi Hashem Huledet, who has a birthday here? He couldn't figure out all the people he loved, the 2 sides of the family. And it was not a Shiva where there was no talking. There wasn't a Shiva that was so difficult that you couldn't sit there. It wasn't like that. Yishai Meital made sure that they spoke to people. And then at the end, Yahel said, I want another week of Shiva because it was actually very supportive to him. I think that says a lot about it. One woman came, Oshra Koren. People here know Rabbanit Oshra Koren. She's the one who runs Matan, women's learning in Ranana. Anyway, her daughter is married to my son-in-law's brother. So she came in and it was, I don't know, 6 o'clock or 6:15, and Yishai was just starting to say his story again and they needed quiet. She took the 2 boys into the bedroom and played with them for 40 minutes. It's just amazing, the kinds of things that people do. Something that I have come to understand is that grandparents do not have a status of grieving. We don't have a halachic status. We don't have a designated place. And I haven't figured out what to do about that. One person who came said, because you can't say Hamakom Yinachem Etchem, that doesn't feel right. But one person said to me this Sephardic bracha of Min Hashamayim Tenuchamu, may you be comforted from God, from heaven. And that felt right because we too need comforting. One of the hardest moments was telling Yishai that he needs a minyan when he was planning the week because he has to say Kaddish for his son. And he just totally lost it. Sometimes grieving changes the way we read texts or read things that are happening. So I shared that they wanted to use, I don't think I said this. They wanted the letter Yud to be in his name because Yud signifies God. That was the reason. Yahel, Yehuda, and then Yovel. And the day that he passed away was Yud Iyar, which has 3 Yuds in it, but one Yud is separate from the other 2 Yuds. And I don't think I shared this with Meitan Yishai, but for me, it just all of a sudden took on a completely different meaning, that was the day that he passed away. And on the last day of his Shiva, we were laning the beginning of Bahar, and Bahar has 4 references. In the first Aliyah, which we laned, Yovel is mentioned 4 times. And over Bahar B'chukotai, which was read together, it's mentioned 18 times. And all of a sudden 18, which means chai or life, just took on such a different meaning. I'll again say here, even though they're not here, but Rabbi Minadav and his wife were just incredible. Rabbi Minadav, I said to him, I'm going to give you the highest compliments I know. You could be a rabbi at HIR. And I think he took it as a compliment. And I was thinking of Rav Stephen, but that's okay. He just stepped forward, stepped back. He was available. He did whatever was needed. He was phenomenal, and even gave me time to talk afterwards and kind of process and talk about what the community could use. Meital said that this has reframed her priorities. She, on Fridays, and Friday is, people don't work generally on Fridays, usually, except if you're in school, I guess a teacher, but she wasn't teaching. So Yishai would take the boys to the beach or wherever on Friday so she could have time. She loves hosting. So she was home with Yoveli, maybe put him in for a nap. And she would prepare. She said, now I want to host, but I don't want to spend all that time away from my boys hosting. So I want to say something I was able to do is I bought her a freezer. And I said, now you can make extra food. You can put it in the freezer. You can buy things and put them in the freezer. And I hope you can spend more time with your boys. And she said that is exactly what she's been doing. So that felt really good. Leave a little bit. Something that was very, very hard for me was that I hadn't held or seen Yobeli in person since November. I mean, I was taking the bayit on the birthright trip, so I assumed I would see him in August. And Meital reminded me that every time she gave him a bath, she would FaceTime with me. His first bath, and he always looked at me. He listened to me singing. Every time, he just didn't look away, which was very unusual for a little baby, but he just looked at me the whole time. I said, it looks like he really sees me in the phone. I'm like, maybe he'll recognize me when I get off the plane and come in person. But I still have that pain of not holding him. So over the course of the Shiva, as Yishai told the story over and over and over again, after we got up from Shiva and went to the cemetery and then came back, we had a family. And that's one more thing that I'll say that was so beautiful was that I know the teachers from Ranana because I'm from Ranana, but we weren't like friendly. And over the course of this time, we just discovered a bonding and kinship that surpassed the grief. We just discovered that we really love spending time with each other. And it made it much easier. We're all working together on this initiative. Everybody's doing something. There's already a website. I'm sorry, it's in Hebrew, but it will be hopefully in English at some point. And decided to call it, instead of Ayin Tovah, good eye, which is a little tricky in Hebrew, especially because Ayin Hara is the opposite. It's called it Lirot Tov, to see the good, or seeing the good, or a generous eye, or something like that. And everybody got together and decided to do it that way. So here's something that's so connected to the Bayit, that's so seemingly happenstance. A few weeks before Yoveli died, somebody reached out and asked to join all our WhatsApp groups. Now, when people who we don't know ask to join our WhatsApp groups, they can't join it. It goes to the office, and then the office checks, do we know this person? And then if they don't know the person, they reach out to me, and then I vet that person. So sometimes it really is phishing, or, so I saw a person from Israel had tried to reach our WhatsApp groups, and I looked at his WhatsApp, and it looked real. A picture of him with his wife and 3 little girls. And I started talking to him in Hebrew over text, and we had a phone call, and I just had a really good feeling that this person is real. And what he wanted was that he himself lives in Kibbutz Elon, which is up north, very near where the fighting is happening. He has some restaurants, and he has been himself and other people, they've been providing meals over the course of the war. And now even more so as things escalate. He said, we're tapped out. I was just looking for ways to raise money. So I had a good feeling about him, and I reached out to some of our IDF WhatsApp groups in the neighborhood, and I got the green light to do it, and we raised about $2,500. And just as I was about to send the money, all this happened. So he reached out to me. I was in Israel, and he said, what's happening? Everything okay? And I said, well, actually, I'm here because my grandson is very sick. And he said, oh, I'm organizing Tehillim. It's not a religious kibbutz. Organizing Tehillim, we're doing it. And the next day I told him the sad news. I sent him the money, of course. And he said to me, I don't believe this. Oh my goodness, we're going to say a prayer. Two days later, he reaches out to me and he said, this guy is like in 4th gear all the time. He said, we're going to send meals to the front and we're going to put stickers of Yoveli so people will know. And I'm like, wait a minute, you don't even know. This was during the Shiva, that there's this whole initiative. So I reached out to Meital and Yisha. I said, are you okay with this? And they, they weren't sure because it's not about raising money, this whole initiative, but it was meals. And they said, you know what? Okay. And Maria, who's another sister, who's a graphic artist, one of my daughters, she designed it. That's the beautiful picture that you saw in the email. She designed, the only reason that picture and all that came about is because I connected with this guy, David, in the North. And it's just such an amazing thing. And he's continued. He put it on his cash register. He put it on his car. His wife put on her car. The soldiers, I've been so touched by this that the high command asked for 2,000 more stickers. The high command in the army. I mean, it's just become this really amazing thing. So he and I are continuing with initiatives like that. But, who knew that somebody was trying to find money to raise at the Bayit, that it would bring something so blessed coming out of it. I'm good, thank you. I shared on Shavuot. I don't know how many people heard the drasha, but I'll share the story again about myself. That during the Shiva, I was talking to my daughter and sharing something that somebody had done. And I had an uncomfortable relationship with this person. I don't even think the person knows, but the person had said something not so nice to me a couple of years ago, and that stayed within me. And I realized that I was doing everything that Yishai was describing. I was seeing everything that this person did through that lens of an ayin lo kol kach tova. And I had a hard time allowing myself to be open with that person. And in that moment, I realized, I said, I'm going to do it. And I did. I called that person and I didn't discuss the difficult part. I said, thank you so much for this kindness that you did. It was so special. It felt so good. I want to thank you. And I felt this amazing opening, in myself and between us, and taught me how you can do that in real time. You just do it. You just do it. You make the phone call, you send the text, but the real work is changing your own attitude. And over Shavuot, over 50 communities in Israel and some here shared, and it's continuing. There are more communities that are sharing this idea of Ayin Tovah. It's an initiative that's so beautiful because everybody can do it, and everybody can do it for your entire life. It's a question of when you want to change your attitude and do something like that. So, Beitali and Yishai are asking everyone to be ambassadors of Lirot Tov. Because when we see good in someone, we help to create it. And that's how we can perpetuate a legacy for Yoveli. And if you do that and you want to share your story, you can send it to me and they would be glad to put on the website, working on the English. That's my job, is the English. So it is true that Meital and Yishai and I, all of us, are a family who lost a child. But we're also a family of warmth and of love and presence and community. And we want this story to be much more than about loss. But as Yishai said, and as so many people have said, there are no words that are enough, but we do have songs. So I wanted to ask people to sing with me, as we sang so many times. And I prepared a sheet, which the tombstone unveiling was Friday morning. Martin and I got up at 2:30 and we watched it. And I know that I've been a little more melancholy and sad since then, waiting for that to pass. They did something so beautiful. The tombstone is like beyond beautiful. First of all, in Israel, it's not upright very often. It's usually flat. So there's a little more room. Of course, it's a baby's flat, but it still has more room. It's smaller. And it is in Hebrew, most of it. And if you see, you know how you put stones on a kever? So I don't know if you can see, you'll see because you'll get it, but they left a ridge all around to put little stones instead of putting stones that obscure what's there. And they asked everybody, they handed out pens and they asked everybody to write a little something. And I think the boys also, they did a balloon as someone, and you can see it a little bit in here. And Meital worked on a drawing of a baby holding a parent's finger. And they used to sing to him from this book, which many of you may know. You know this book? I love you forever. I like you for always. As long as I'm living, my baby you'll be. So they wrote, we'll love you forever, we'll like you for always, as long as we're living, our baby you'll be. And of course, he always will be a baby. So it's a little more meaningful that way. So I have some, and if people could hand out, that would be very helpful. Somebody could hand out. Sure. Good hand, we get some set with that.
So that initiative, which can change the whole world, is why Yovel was on this earth. It's huge.
Hard. They'd much prefer not to have that the reason. I can't say that to them.
People wonder like why somebody's here for a few days, a few months.
The sticker says lirot tov, to see good. Ayin tova mitakenet olam. A generous eye can repair the world. Liloy nishmat, the memory of Yovel Yitzhak, teacher. המלאך הגואל אותי, המלאך הגואל אותי מכל רע, יברך את הימים, מקרב בהם שמי. המלאך הגואל אותי, המלאך הגואל אותי מכל ימים, מקרב בהם שמי, ושם אבותיי, ושם אבותיי, בשם אבותיי, בשם אבותיי, למענך אלוקינו עשה ולא לנו ראה עמידתנו דלים וריקים הנשמה לה והגוף הלך חוסה על המהלך המהלך למענך אלוקינו עשה ולא לנו ראה עמידתנו דלים וריקים הנשמה חוסה
Sure.
הלך שיר למעלות, אשא עיניי אל ההרים, מאין יבוא עזרי, עזרי מעם השם, עושה שמיים בארץ, אל ייתן למוט רגליך, אל ינום שומרך, הנה לא ינום ולא יישן שומר ישראל, השם שומרך, השם צילך, על יד ימינך, יומם השמש לא יככה, וירח בלילה, השם ישמורך מכל רע, ישמור את נפשך, השם ישמור צאתך ובואך. אנא השם, כי אני עבדך. אנא השם, אנא השם, כי אני עבדך. אנא השם, אנא השם, כי אני עבדך. אנא השם, אנא השם, כי אני עבדך. אני עבדך, בן אמתך, אני עבדך, בן אמתך, אני עבדך, בן אני עבדך, בן אמתך, אני עבדך, בן אמתך, אני עבדך. Isha and I had a discussion about the next song, which is one of my favorite songs to get me through hard times. And for me, well, for Yishai, my son-in-law, he said, he thinks it is about God's presence and God's revelation, but in Midat Hadin, in the, I don't know how to say it. What do you say Midat Hadin in English? Attribute of justice or judgment. He felt that that's what it is. But I feel that in my darkest places that Hashem is just waiting in the corner behind the screen, and I need to reach out even harder to feel God. ואפילו בהסתרה, שבתוך ההסתרה, בוודאי גם שם, נמצא השם יתברך, ואפילו בהסתרה, שבתוך ההסתרה, בוודאי גם שם, נמצא השם יתברך. אוי אוי אוי, גם מאחורי דברים הקשים העוברים עליך, אני עומד, אני עומד, אני עומד. גם מאחורי הדברים הקשים עומדים עליך. I always sing it wrong. אני עומד, אני עומד, אני עומד. אוי אוי אוי, גם מאחורי הדברים הקשים עוברים עליך. אני עומד, אני עומד. אני עומד. Oh, you're right. גם מאחורי הדברים הקשים העוברים עליך, אני עומד, אני עומד, אני עומד, ואפילו בהסתרה, שבתוך ההסתרה, ודאי גם שם, נמצא השם יתברך, ואפילו בהסתרה, שבתוך ההסתרה, בוודאי גם שם, נמצא השם יתברך. אוי אוי אוי, גם מאחור הדברים הקשים העוברים עליך, אני עומד, אני עומד, אני עומד. גם מאחורי הדברים הקשים עוברים עליך, אני עומד, אני עומד, אני עומד. Thank you for coming. Thank you for listening. And when I smile, it's a real smile. Don't worry.
Just without sufficient or appropriate words, but on behalf of everyone who's here and on Zoom and so many more people, just want to express our hakarat hatov, our gratitude for the courage that you have displayed every step of the way, but especially in these moments in opening up your heart to share your grief and your love and your laughter and your songs and Yoveli's story and your family's story with us. I'm thinking about the moment that you described of wanting to be in the room. And each of us wanted to be with you in that room, with your family and with Yovel, and is here because we want to be with you in this room. Our community's relationship with you is not one of reciprocity. It's not because you've been there for us, we want to be there for you. It's one of mutuality. You're there for us and with us because we know that you love us. And we're here with you and for you because we love you. And I imagine that people may want to stay to offer personal words to you. And as long as you have the strength for that and others have the patience to wait your turn, Rabbanit Bracha and Martin will be here, and feel free to take the opportunity to come up and share the words that are on your heart, or to give a hug, or
Not too hard.
yes, not too hard, or those words of Mina Shamayim Tenuchamu, may you and your family find comfort. Those who want to go, of course, may go. There's some drinks in the lobby, and find other opportunities to reach out. It doesn't need to be in this moment. And I know the people in this room and those on Zoom and beyond have already reached out in so many ways and will continue to. But I want to make sure you know that Rabbanit Bracha will remain, and you can use this opportunity to take some personal moments. Thank you to each of you for being here.
You don't have to cross the street. I'm right here.
Want you to know how much we love you, how much, and what you can feel that love and take it in.
That's fine.
So good. I think you did say that.
Thank you.
So beautiful. Thank you. Can I tell you? I sent the thing that you planted the tree that you loved.
One question. Can I still send you music before?
Yes, you can still sing the music. Please, don't change anything.
Okay.
Don't change. Love you. Thanks.